Welcome to live lecture sessions of Swayam Prabha channel. My name is Riya Pramanik. So, we are currently learning about BPSC 132, that is Indian Government and Politics. So, we have completed almost half of the blocks and half of the units in our previous sessions. Today, I will be talking about block 4, that is Society and Politics. In this part, we will be talking about Unit 10, that is Caste, Class, and Tribe, and Unit 11, that is Gender. So let's begin with Unit 10, that is Caste, Class, and Tribes. So this entire unit, that is Unit 10, is about identities. Identities denote relations among social groups. That means when a person is living in a social group, he or she have certain kinds of identities. He must be a man, a woman, upper caste men, lower caste women. There are many identities in which the social groups exist, and some identities are hereditary in nature. Hereditary, hereditary, I mean to say that which comes with the generations after generation, it used to carry forward. So, the nature of such identities may undergo changes, but these identities remain. So, the identities which are hereditary in nature that remains, even though if it undergoes with certain changes. Such identities are known as caste. Some identities are not hereditary. So, as we are learning about caste, class, and gender, we can say that caste is a hereditary in nature, whereas there are some identities which are not hereditary in nature, that doesn't carry forward from generations after generations. These identities depends upon the economic conditions of a person, and such identities are known as classes. So these identities are known as classes, which is based on the economic conditions of a person. Whereas some identities are defined by certain characteristics which members of such group have. Such identities are known as tribes. So, caste, class, and tribes are among several other identities such as religion, language, or region. So, as we know that India is a very diverse country where there are many religions, languages, culture, ethnicities living together. In that, we also have identities like caste, class, and tribes. And in this session, we will be trying to learning about these identities, these three particular identities in our lecture. So let's begin with caste. Caste denotes position of a social group in a hierarchy of relations. So always remember that in caste there are certain hierarchies. This position is based on the birth of a person. As we already discussed that it is hereditary in nature, that means generations after generations people will carry forward these identities among themselves. That means it is based on the birth of a person. Apart from the caste being hereditary, it is also endogamous. So, as we learn this term endogamous, let's talk about this. What does it mean? So, endogamous means that a person can marry within his or her caste only. Endogamous means you can't go outside that caste. These are the notional feature of caste. No person can move uh, outside the caste, and he has to marry in the caste only. So traditionally every caste was assigned specific occupation in society. So each and every caste which exists in our Indian society are assigned some kinds of occupation which they can carry, which they can do in their lives. So, the caste based occupations also indicated the social hierarchy in the society. So, people who are generally associated with reading Vedas and books, holy books, and Sanskritic books, they are known as Brahmins. There are also people who are assigned the job of securing the population of a space or an area. They are known as Kshatriyas, whose ultimate job is to protect the people. Next come the Vaishyas, who are involved in agricultural practices and other uh, occupations, like for example artisans and all. And then come the Shudras, and the task assigned to Shudras are to helping and serving the three castes, upper castes, that means Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. The Shudra's job is to serve all these three upper castes. So different castes were grouped into four varnas. In traditionally, these castes are known as varnas, and these varnas, as we already talked about, this is about Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. The erstwhile untouchable caste, which are placed in the scheduled caste category in the government gazette, are also known as Dalits. So, from ancient time, there is a particular caste which is considered to be untouchable because of their job, which is considered impure in nature. So, these people, when India got independence, these people were placed into a category which is known as scheduled caste category, and in the government's gazette they are known as Dalits. Over the years, especially after independence, these ideal features of caste have undergone significant changes. So, with time, the history moves forward, and there were many changes occurred in the ideal features of this caste system. However, its two feature, that is hereditary in nature and endogamy, remain largely enduring. So, though there were many changes occurred with time, but there were two features that remains till now, that is hereditary nature of caste and endogamy. According to Louis Dumont, the author of Homo Hierarchius, different castes in India are placed in a graded hierarchy. There is a graded hierarchy where these caste peoples are situated, or they were given different levels of their caste. So he argues that in power relationships among castes, Brahmins enjoy more decisive role than the Kshatriyas. It is because it is believed that the purest form of any caste, that is Brahmins, they are the one who have the right to read the texts, the traditional texts like Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas, and they also played a very important role in the kingdoms. They used to give advices to the king to run the country. So, according to him, Louis Dumont, he says that Brahmins enjoy more powers and more decisive rules than the Kshatriyas. Dumont's notion of caste has been challenged by Nicholas Dirks and others. So there are many theories regarding these caste hierarchies, and they were also challenged, they were also criticized by some other authors. So the Dumont's notion was criticized as it failed to explain the social change, dynamism, and individualistic strivings even within the traditional Indian society. So, on these grounds, Dumont's notion of caste system is criticized by Nicholas Dirks and other authors. Gerald Berryman pointed out that principle of Brahmanical hierarchy was not uniformly followed by all Hindus. So, according to Gerald Berryman, he said that this features of Brahmanical hierarchy is not followed uniformly all over India, because India is a very huge country and there are many differences in conditioning, and there are many things that involves, and then that requires changes in the society, and because of that we can't say that, like Berryman is saying that we can't say that it is uniformly followed all over the country. So he said that it is not uniform. He also criticized the Dumontian notion that power and economic factors are distinct and epiphenomenal to caste. So, this is what Dumont got criticized upon by Gerald Berman, that there is a notion of power and economic factors. Nicholas Dirk cites ethnographic and textual evidences to demonstrate that Brahmins and their texts were not so central to the social fabric of Indian life. So, according to this view, power relations and command over men and resources were very important. So, there were many resources, natural resources, and other resources, and the command of men over them is very important to understand. Brahmins were merely ritual specialists, often subordinate to powerful ruling families. So, according to that viewpoint, they are saying that the Brahmins, they were only ritual specialists. They used to pray gods. They were the priests who were taking care of all the ritualistic things. So they say that they often subordinate to powerful ruling families. That means ruling families are more powerful than the Brahmins. So according to this view, the caste-based scriptural or Brahmanical model of traditional India was an invention of the British Orientalists and ethnographers. However, caste played a very critical role in the Indian social reformers and nationalist perception of caste. So, it is said that it is certainly not a mere product of British imagination, but it also, the caste played a very important role in the Indian social reformers and nationalist perception also. So, there are many policies of the state which diluted the rigidity of caste relations. So, let's talk about these policies which tries to dilute the rigidity of caste system from our Indian society. So, these policies are social welfare scheme for the welfare of marginalized groups. So there are many castes who are supposed to be low in the social hierarchy, and they were discriminated on many bases. So to for the welfare of those marginalized sections of the society, there are many social welfare schemes for these marginalized groups. Implementation of constitutional provisions prohibiting caste-based untouchability. Because as I already told you that the upper three castes were served by the Shudras or the Dalits were considered to be impure in nature, and because they used to do menial jobs, and that is why they were considered untouchables by the upper caste of our Indian society, which is very wrong. And that is why whenever India got independence in the year 1947, the constitution makers made sure that these kinds of discriminatory practices should be abolished. So there were the implementation of constitutional provisions which prohibits these caste based untouchability things. There are also reservations for the SCs in the government jobs, political institutions, land reforms, etc., to make them more developed and to bring them to the equal level of other three upper castes, because they were traditionally very discriminated since a very long period of time. The notion of purity and pollution do not impact the role of caste outside family as rigidly as it did earlier in the public sphere. So, earlier, because of so much discrimination and the concept of impurity and pollution, people people who belongs to the upper caste categories, they used to keep distance with the lower caste categories, because they used to think that they will become impure if they touch them or if their shadow fell on them. So these were all evil practices which were going on in our Indian society. And but with time, the notion of impurity and pollution, it got diluted, and now there is very less there is very less cases where this purity and pollution concept works in the public sphere. Caste has also played an important role in Indian democracy. So these are the things which diluted the rigidity of the caste system, which was practiced since a very long period of our history. Following the introduction of the universal adult franchise with the commencement of the Indian Constitution, as every adult citizen of India got an opportunity to participate in electoral democracy, caste became an important tool for political mobilization. So, because earlier these lower caste peoples were not allowed to participate in any political events or any political decisions, they were very marginalized. They were marginalized in every aspect of politics, and they were not allowed to go to schools. So in that case, they were very discriminated and they were marginalized. And because of the universal adult franchise which came with India's independence, it was ensured that all citizens of India, irrespective of their caste, class, creed, religion, they will be given equal opportunities and equal rights to participate in the democracy. And after that, we can say that caste became a very important tool for political mobilization of the electoral population. So, according to Leo Rudolph and Suzanne Rudolph, caste associations have played crucial role in mobilizing caste for getting their democratic rights. Apart from caste associations, several parties which address the issues of specific caste or caste groups have emerged in India. These parties aim to empower specific castes. So there are many parties whose foundation is based on the caste system, and they belong to a particular caste, and they try to they try to uh, empower these specific castes so that they can also have same kinds of equal rights, and they can also voice their opinions as like other caste members. So the policies of the governments led by these parties devised policies to mobilize their support. They help them to get support of various castes. So we can say that caste also started playing a very important role in our politics. So let's talk about class. This was all about caste system. Now let's talk about class. Class is different from caste. As I discussed in our very first slide, that there is a difference between caste and class. Why? Because caste is considered to be hierarchic in nature, whereas class is based on the economic condition of a person. So, unlike caste, class is not hereditary. It is also not restricted to any religion. So, caste basically restricted to few religions in our country, but the class is not restricted to any religion, and we can find many classes in different religions irrespective of their faith. So, class denotes economic position of a group or a person belonging to such group. So it is the notion of class is particularly based on the economic factors. So class is generally associated with the relationship of a person to the economic aspect. It shows the relationship of a group with the economic resources, control of the resources, and their distribution among groups or individuals. So, how the economic resources are distributed among different people, and who controls what resources, and who controls the major resources, and the distribution among groups and individuals, it is all about class relationships. So although class is an economic category, it is not devoid of its relationship with non-economic aspects such as caste, tribe, or religion. So though it is based on the economic aspect of a person, but it is also not totally separate from the non-economic aspects such as caste, tribe, or religion. In Marxian terms, there are basically two types of classes: the haves and the have-nots. So let's talk about what Marx call about classes. He considers that there are two classes, that is haves and have-nots, which we will see in our next slide. The haves, according to Marx, own resources or means of production. So, if it suppose there is an agricultural production going on, so who will be owning the means of production? According to Marx, it is the haves who have that resource to own the means of production. The have nots do not own resources but have labor power. So, the person, for example, if we talk about an agricultural field, the machineries, the instruments to plug the land or tilt the land, all things will be owned by the haves. The have nots don't have any means of production, but what they have labor power. So they used to work in those fields, and that is why they are considered have nots, because they don't own any resources. In a capitalist society, those who own means of productions are called bourgeois or bourgeoisie. So, According to Marx, in a capitalist society, the persons who owns the means of production, they are known as bourgeoisie. They do not work, and work in their enterprise is done by the workers or the proletariats. So the person who owns all the means of production, they are known as bourgeoisie, and they themselves do not work on their own field. It is the workers or the proletariats who work in their field using their labor power. So there are two classes, haves and have-nots. Have is bourgeoisie and have-nots are proletariats. Bourgeoisies don't work on their field. Proletariat don't have means of production, but they work on the bourgeoisie's land. So the bourgeoisie make profit from the labor of the workers. Since in India, the industries from a smaller proportion of economy in comparison to agriculture, the industrialist and the working classes form smaller part of classes. The composition and formation of classes in Indian agriculture have varied in different regions. So there are, like we can't say that it is also uniform across India. The combination, the composition, and the formation of classes, they varied due to the geographical locations and different features. So, in post-independence period, the agrarian classes can be described as follows: landlords and tenants, kulaks, rich peasants, middle peasants, and agricultural laborers, marginal and small farmers, and footloose labor. So, post-independence time, we can see that there were certain classes, agrarian classes, which used to exist. They were known by these names. So classes have close relationship with caste. Though caste is hereditary and class is non-hereditary, but still they have a very close relationship. Although all classes are found in all castes, generally the low castes, Dalits and lower section have larger share of poorer classes than high caste. So we can say that the persons who belong to lower section, they are also poor classes as compared to the other high caste people who belong to the rich classes. So we can say that there is a close relationship between class and caste. The rich farmers or the middle farmers mostly belong to high castes, and middle classes such as Jats, Yadavs, Marathas, Reddis, Kammas, Vokkaligas, and Lingayats. Let's talk about middle class. Middle classes generally denote those classes who are engaged in salaried occupations in public or private sector. So the persons who belong to this particular middle class, they are all salaried persons. Like they get salaries at the end of the month from a public or private institutions. They also include professionals or self-employed persons such as doctors, lawyers, or journalists. Middle classes are not homogeneous groups. Depending on their economic conditions and positions in public or private jobs, middle classes can be grouped as lower middle class, or upper middle class. So, in this middle class, also, there are three distinctions of classes because of their economic conditions and position in the public and private institutions. So, there is also within the middle class, there is also lower middle class, and upper middle class categories. Let's move forward to tribes. Let's see what does we mean by tribes. Tribes refer to a group of people who share some characteristics which are different from those of castes. So there is a difference between a caste and tribes. So tribes have some kind of special characteristics which differs them from the caste. The principal defining characteristic of a tribe is not birth into a specific religion. Tribes belong to different religions. So we can't say that like a caste, it is only in Hinduism or it's only in other religions. But tribes can belong to any religion like animists, Christians, Buddhists, or Muslims. So tribes can belong to any religion. They are not confined to a particular religion. Some scholars regard tribal as indigenous. In Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and a section of tribal in Assam are also known as Adivasis, the inhabitants of a particular place. So tribals in India have been subjected to prolonged exploitation and deprivation. So the tribes, India is a country uh, where there are many forest areas, many remote areas, rural areas. So we can find many tribal identities in these areas, and it is believed that they have been subjected to prolonged exploitation and deprivation of resources. Tribes as a concept was introduced by the Britishers during the 19th century in India. So, the concept of tribes introduced very recently, very recently in the sense in the British colonial period. So, it was used to differentiate the communities which did not fit into the definition of caste. So, those people who do not fit into the definition of caste are considered to be tribes, are differentiated the communities. So the concept of tribe was officially defined in the Government of India Act 1935. Before that, there was no concept like that. So for the very first time, or officially, the concept of tribe was defined in the Government of India Act 1935. According to Article 341 of the Constitution, the President of India may specify tribes or tribal communities, groups within certain tribes in a state for the purpose of the Constitution. So, there are many articles dedicated to the tribal peoples of our country. Among them, 341, Article 341 is one of them. So, let's talk about Article 342, which provides special administrative measures for the welfare of the scheduled tribes. So there are many administrative measures that undertakes the welfare of the scheduled tribes of our country. The constitution also ensures protection of the tribal languages, dialects and culture. So there is a ministry over that, Ministry of Tribal Affairs, which works on these fields where they uh, tries to protect the language, dialects, and culture of the tribal people. The sixth schedule provides for establishment of autonomous district councils in the hills inhabited by the tribes in northeast India. There is a schedule, particular schedule, that is at the sixth schedule, which provides for establishment of autonomous district councils in the hills that is inhabited by the tribal people in the northeast India. The fifth schedule area provides for the establishment of tribal advisory councils in tribal dominated areas of mainland India. So, in the sixth schedule, it is for the northeast India. The fifth schedule is for the mainland India. The Constitution of India contains many special assertions for the tribes. So let's talk about the characteristic of tribal people in our country. We can identify certain features which are associated with the tribes, though the tribal society is undergoing transformation. So we can't say that whatever we are learning in this, whatever the features they have, this is all continuing since long. No, there are many transformations happened earlier also, and it is undergoing transformation till now. So traditionally we will be talking about what are the particular features of these tribes. So traditionally tribes have been inhabiting hills and forests which are generally located in areas which lack basic facilities, that is roads, schools, health facilities. So they live in those areas which don't have these kinds of basic facilities, because they used to live in very rural part of our country or the forested areas. The agriculture in such areas mostly involve family labor. So that means it is not like that people are hiring someone else. They used to work in their own field and their own agricultural land uh, as a family. They used to give family labor. So in the tribal dominated areas, chum or shifting cultivation is practiced, which is a very main feature, that jhum cultivation is practiced among the tribal groups of India. People are also engaged in the livestock, fishing, hunting, forestry, etc., construction sector, mining, and quarrying. Usage of relatively traditional means of cultivation. So, as we can see that because of technology, many people are using technologies to use in their field, but these tribes relatively use traditional tools and traditional means to cultivate their own land. The tribals do not have access to developed market to sell their products, though they are also producing agricultural produce, but still they do not have access to the market to sell their products. In comparison to women in the non-tribal societies, women generally enjoy more equality. So this is a very important feature and very important characteristics of a tribal society. That is that as compared to the non-tribal societies of our country, the women of the tribal families enjoy more equality. Tribal chiefs or community leaders play decisive role in the adjudication of affairs within the tribe. So there are tribal chiefs who look after all the tribal affairs in their own tribes. So the sixth schedule and fifth schedule of the constitution protect the customs and economic interests and political rights of the tribes in hills and plain areas. So policies for reservation in public employment, the elected bodies and welfare schemes have contributed to change in tribal society to a considerable extent. So because they were devoid of all those basic facilities, so there are many ways through which the constitution of our country tries to uplift these tribal peoples like all other citizens of our country. So there are reservations provided to the tribal people in public employment, elected bodies and welfare schemes are also there which can uplift their conditions. There are many political movements in which tribes are associated with. So tribes in different regions of India have been engaged in political movement against their exploitation and for their political autonomy from time to time. So there are many tribes who wanted political autonomy and they raised voices against their exploitation as well. So during the 19th century, the tribes were involved in a series of revolts against the colonial rule and its interference in their lives, culture, rights of tribal communities. Because Britishers used to cut all the trees, they used to go inside the forest to extract all the minerals, all the trees from there. So these things, these practices of British Empire were very disturbing for the tribals because they feel that they are interfering in their lives, their culture, and their rights. So there were many revolts that they undertook during the colonial period. In post-independence period also, the tribals have been involved in movements for ending backwardness of their regions and their political marginalization. So it is not like that only British period, in the colonial period only they revolted. They also revolted after independence as well. Through the movement, they seek political and regional autonomy by rearranging existing relations between vertical units of the governance, that is, the local governance institution, state, and the center. So, some tribal groups have been involved in insurgency as well, which means they get popular support in their movement, which often become violent. So, uh, in some tribal movements, it turned out to be a very violent movement. Among the examples of different types of autonomy movements in Northeast India are the movement of Nagas in the Naga inhabited areas, the Mizos in Mizoram, and the Bodo tribes in Assam. They want political autonomy, and there have been movements going on from these areas. So, this was all about caste, class, and tribe. Let's move forward to know gender. That is Unit 11. So, introduction. If to introduce this gender, let's talk about what does gender mean. What is the difference, and what are the major characteristics of gender? So, people in a society can be identified on the basis of language, religion, caste, sex, gender, tribe, etc. As I already told, there are many identities of a person. So it is essential to know what gender is and how it is different from related concept of sex. So there is a difference between sex and gender. Generally, many people consider that sex and gender are the same. So people generally they feel that it is same, whether they are right male and female in sex column or gender column, they feel it is same, but it is not true. There is a difference between the sex and the gender. Sex denotes the biological identity of a person. Gender signifies the role of social, economic, political, and other factors in determining the position of sex in society. So, the biological difference between a male and a female is considered to be sex, whereas gender is socially constructed thing. So, the gender signifies the role of social, economic, political, and other factors in determining the position of sex in society. So it means the levels of social status, economic conditions, and power positions of men, women, or transgenders are determined by the social, political, economic conditions in which they are placed. So we have to keep that in mind that gender and sex is not same. Gender is socially constructed and it considered to play significant role in the political, economic, and social aspects of the society. As men, women, and transgender grow in different circumstances, they do not enjoy similar status in society. As we all know, there are many discriminations happening over these gender issues. So, men, women, and transgenders grow in different circumstances since their childhood, and they do not enjoy similar status in society. There are distinctions, there are discriminations. So there exists social hierarchy, economic and political inequalities in their positions. In our society, men are placed in higher position in relation to women and transgenders. Men enjoy more freedom than the women or transgenders, as we all know. The society in which men enjoy superior power than the women are known as patriarchal societies. So, it is very important to know what is a patriarchal society or what is patriarchy. So, it is a society where men enjoy superior power than women and transgenders. So these societies are known as patriarchal society, and in these societies where women theoretically enjoy power in certain aspects of society are called matriarchal societies. So where there is superior power of men, it is known as patriarchal society, and there are also societies where women theoretically enjoy power more than men, that is matriarchal society. So, patriarchal values do not treat women with equality. If a person has patriarchal values, then that means they feel that men are superior than women and they do not treat women equally as compared to men. In India, with exception of three tribes in Meghalaya, that is Khasis, Garos, and Jaintias, Nayars in Kerala, and some tribes in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, patriarchy exists. So we can see that in our country, it is basically patriarchal society, but there are very few exceptions also, like the tribes in Meghalaya, that means Khasis, Garos, and Jaintias, the Nayars in Kerala, and some tribes in Andaman and Nicobar Islands are matriarchal in nature, where the women has more power. Theoretically, they have more powers than others. So among these tribes, matrilineal system exists. So these were the tribes where matrilineal system exists and there is no patriarchy. However, as Tiplut Nongobri, a sociologist, underlines with the reference to the Khasis, matrilineal system does not treat women equally in some respects. So it is believed that in matriarchal society, women enjoys certain powers over men. But according to Tiplut Nongrebri, who is a sociologist, he says that in Khasi tribe that exists in Meghalaya, matrilineal system does not treat women equally in some respects. So there are few exceptions. Let's talk about gender and issues related to that. Since the 1980s, the scope of women's movement at the local levels, villages, and towns, and at higher levels, and range of issues raised by them have widened. So, before 1980s, women were not aware that much, but after this period, the women movement came into existence, majorly came into existence, and it existed in local levels like villages, towns, and also at higher levels. And they were talking about many issues. They raised many issues regarding gender discriminations. As the gender's position is determined by unequal location of men, women, and transgender in social, political, and economic relation, it is women who are apparently placed in the most vulnerable position. So it is believed that in a society, the women's position is the most vulnerable, and there are several problems which continue to pose a challenge to their emancipation and empowerment. So there are many challenges that women used to face in a country where they don't feel equal with their male counterparts. There are many discriminations happening. They not only face challenges in workplaces or in a public sphere, but also within the family. So there are many challenges that women has to undergo, that is rapes, domestic violence cases are there. There is also discriminations with daughters that happens in the family level as compared to their son. There is also issues of dowry, bride burning because of non payment of dowry. Then there are sex determination tests, cases of harassment in public or private institutions. There is also issues like child marriage, discrimination by some traditional caste panchayats such as khaps, and in the work and also in getting wages. So there are many issues that exist which are still there in our society, and they create gender discrimination between men and women. Though slowly we are moving forward, and there are few cases of these discriminations come to our notice, but it is not fully over. It needs more education among the masses to get rid of all these challenges in our society. So, gender based inequality is largely rooted in social and economic disparities, lack of representation of women, and transgender in decision making institutions. So, we can say that the gender based inequality is also seen in political arena where women are less in number as compared to men who can represent the masses. So, as a result of which, we can see very few women in decision making institutions. It is believed that if women get education and economic independence, it will help reduce their gender based discrimination. But it is not sufficient condition. Not only education and economic independence can bring their position as the same as men in the level, but such condition can be supplemented by change in the patriarchal values. So it is many times seen that even though a person is very educated, but he or she has patriarchal values. Also remember that patriarchy is not only limited to men. Women can also have patriarchal values among themselves. So it is a value which can exist both in men and women. So these values should be changed. Not only education and economic independence can ensure their equality, but this patriarchal nature or patriarchy should go away. So, gender based discrimination is thus embedded in the level of human development. That is possible by change in patriarchal values that support gender based discrimination. So, because patriarchy supports gender based discrimination, because it talks about the superiority of men over women, so this patriarchal values should be changed. So let's talk about gender and movements and their historical background. So women's movement in India can be traced to pre-independence period. So before independence, also there were many movements uh, for women which aims to empower them. issues like sati pratha where the bride of the person, of the dead person, is burnt alive on the funeral pyre of her husband, was very barbaric in nature. And this sati pratha was came into notice by Ram Mohan Roy, who bring these issues to the British government, who ultimately uh, make laws and rules which ended it. Also, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar talked about remarriage of widows, which was considered to be very sensitive issue in our society. Jyotirao Phule founded Satya Sodhak Samaj to end social evils associated with caste, which also negatively affected women. So there are many people who worked on these issues in the pre-independence time. Due to the influence of the social reformers, the British government made laws which banned customs of sati, child marriage, and permitted women to remarry. So we can say that in the pre-independence India also, people were aware that there are certain practices which are harming women. So women leaders supported by the Congress demanded equal voting right and representation of women in legislative bodies. Let's come to the post independent period. Gender based discrimination and inequality became a focus of studies in social sciences during the 1975 to 1985, which was known as the International Women's Decade. So, this was the period where women were very active and they started raising voice against this gender based discrimination and the inequalities happening in the society. In several universities, centers for women studies were established. This was the time when Center for Women Studies and Center for Women's Development, these centers were started in many universities. There are several organizations, activists, scholars, intellectuals, and leaders who attempted to end gender based discrimination and equality. They strive to end male dominance and seek equality for all genders. It is not like that that if women are talking about gender based discrimination, so they doesn't mean that women should go up and men should go down. No, they wanted equality between men and women. So women's movement adopt different ways such as demonstrations, dharnas, mass petitions, social media, etc., to underline these demands and pressurize the government to accept them. So, many things were happening in this period between 1975 and 85, and that is the reason why this decade is known as International Women's Decade, because many activities were happening, people were demonstrating, people were giving dharnas, there were mass petitions, and social media was also used at recent times. So it can be seen that there is awareness among the masses of Indian society. Not only women were participating in these activities, but also there were many men who were also participating and who were wanting to create equality between genders. So, these ways also help to generate consciousness and sensitize people about gender discrimination and gender inequality. So, all these activities, all these dharnas, all these protests which were happening, they helps to generate the consciousness among the people, and it also sensitize people about gender discrimination and gender inequality. Gender discrimination and inequalities are intertwined with caste hierarchy and economic inequality. So, while women and transgender from all castes, religions, tribes, or economic strata face gender based discrimination, those from low caste and economically poor classes face multiple form of discrimination. So, as I already told you, that a person has many identities: religious identity, class identity, caste identity, gender identity. So there are many discriminations happening over these identities also. So organizations such as Self-Employed Women's Association, in short form it is known as SEBA, Working Women's Forum, and Annapurna Mahila Mandal empower women by carrying out economic activities. So there are many there are many forums, there are many organizations who work for uplifting the economic condition of the women in our country. So they provide certain jobs, small scale industries are also there, where they hire women so that they can earn their own living and they can be economically independent. So let's talk about the LGBTQ community and transgender persons. Gender based movements are part of new social movements. So always remember that these gender based movements are part of new social movement. The new social movement refers to those social movements for collective actions which are different from movements occurred prior to the 1980s in following ways. So there were also social movements before new social movement, and there are many distinctions between new and old social movements, so which we will be talking about in this slide. So there are movements of those social groups or social classes which were not visibly involved in collective mobilization. So this is the one feature which talks that there are movements of the social groups or social classes which were not visibly involved in collective mobilization. They address these new social movement address new kinds of issues, and they claim to be politically apolitical, or they are not affiliated to any political party. Apolitical means when you are not affiliated to any political party and you are neutral. So these new social movements raises issues which are very new kind. So among such groups are included the transgender groups. They are also known as LGBTQ. And what is the full form of LGBTQ? It is lesbians, gays, bisexuals, transgenders, and queers. So this is LGBTQ. You should remember all these terms. So, according to the Transgender Person Protection of Rights Bill 2016, a transgender person is one who is neither wholly female or male. So, there is a bill which came in 2016, which is known as the Transgender Person Protection of Rights Bill. They in that bill there is some features which the bill talks about the transgender person. They define transgender person as a one who is neither wholly female or male, a combination of male and female, or neither male nor female. So, transgender face discrimination due to the status of their gender, because traditionally it is believed that there is only two genders, that is men and women. But this is not true. There are many other genders as well, uh, which is not considered to be with equal status with men and women. So they face discrimination because of their gender, not only in the families but also in public institutions, also in public sphere, also in private sphere. So they face social stigma, discrimination in getting employment in public or private institutions and within their families. So not only they were very much discriminated in the outside world, but it is very sad that they are also discriminated within the family, in which family they used to uh, belong, and they have relatives from that family, and they face inequalities within that area. So they are demanding dignity, self respect, and right to self identification. So what they want self dignity, because these LGBTQ and transgender persons, they were not given, they are not considered to be human being because of their gender. They were treated so badly in our society. So they demand dignity, they demand self respect, and right to self identification. So this was all about our today's class, in which we have talked about class, caste, and tribes. So to give an overall view of our today's class, we talked about caste, class, and tribes, where we can see that how caste, class, and tribes are different from each other. For example, as I already told you in our today's class, that caste is based on hereditary notion and nature, and also it is endogamous. That means a person from a particular caste can only marry a person from that caste only. So it is hierarchic and endogamous in nature. though there were many transformations happened and many transformations occurred with time in the history, but still these two features remain same, that is hierarchic in nature and endogamous in nature. We also talked about four varnas that existed in our society, that is Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. So, Brahmins are considered to be the superior caste among all these four castes. Kshatriyas come second, whose main job is to protect the country and protect the people. And the Vaishyas are the persons who are related with the agricultural produce, artisans, workers, and all, and the Shudras, who are considered to serve all the three upper castes. So, due to their these caste hierarchies, people used to discriminate among these castes, and which is very discriminatory and exploitative in nature. And because of that, they were also the Shudras, the Dalits are also considered to be untouchables by some upper caste people, and because of that they were not allowed to go to temples, they were not allowed to take water from the village wells, they were not allowed to roam around in the area, because it is considered that whatever they do, whatever they touch, or whatever they do in their work, it is very impure, because their occupation is to do that work, so they are considered to be impure. And because of that there were many exploitations and discriminations happened over the years. To end this discrimination, the government of India, which after independence, in the constitution makers in our country, they specifically give certain rights to these people, because they were traditionally very discriminated, and for that they were given some welfare schemes were there for them, and there are certain reservations for these people so that they can move forward in the social hierarchy, and they can come forward, they can develop themselves, they should get all the opportunities like other caste people. So also in our constitution, the article 17 talks about the abolition of untouchability, which was a very good step to remove these kinds of social evils and social evil practices which used to happen in our country since ancient times. Also, we talked about class, who are based on the economic condition. They are not like it is not based on their birth, but they belong to a particular economic category, and that is why there are classes like that. Also, this class system exists in all religion, all ethnicity, all gender. So it is there in every other identities as well. Also, we talked about the middle classes people, where we talked about how the middle class are the class which are considered to be the salaried persons who get salaries at the end of the month, and they are the persons who work in the private and public institutions. And also we learned that in the middle class there are three other subclasses as well, like lower middle class, upper middle class, and middle class. So we can see that there are many categories exist, and there are many identities exists in our society. And a person, we can't say that a person have only one identity. No, the person, if we're talking about a man, he is a man, he must be belonging to some religion, he must be belonging to some caste, he must be belonging to particular class. So there are many identities a person carries with themselves. We then move forward to unit 11, that is gender, where we saw how gender is very discriminatory in nature, because it is socially constructed and it is different from sex, because sex is biological distinction between a male and a female, but the socially constructed thing is gender, where certain kinds of attributes and certain things are associated with the person. Like for example, it is considered that a man should be very strong, very he should have valor, and all these things, whereas women are considered to be very soft, they are required to give care, nurture, love to the family. So these all these attributes are created by the society. So there is a difference between sex and gender. Also, we talked about how in our country there were many gender based movements happened, not only in the post independence area but pre independence era also. They have certain movements. So these were all about this, and also we talked about LGBTQ community. So in the next class, we will be covering the topics, that is Unit 12 about workers and peasants, and Unit 13, that is secularism. So this is all about today's class. Thank you.